asking me for a garden tour, and it's July. Everything is super lush, so let's get started. I'm going to show you everything that's growing. I'm on about 1 acre, but I'm only growing on probably about a third of that. My goal has never been to be self-sufficient on this property. I'm just trying to create a space where I can grow some of my own food and enjoy nature. The other 2/3 of the property are taken up by 2 houses, my house and my parents' house, which you saw in that first frame there. So a lot of the space that we're using is not being used for growing food or flowers, but we've tried to maximize it as much as we can. And one of the first ways that I'm going to show you how we maximize this space is using the deck to grow food. So I have this amazing green stock tower planter here. This allows me to grow 30 plants in 2 square feet. I'll show you up close. So this one just has a self-watering timer built into it as well, so it's really hands-off. And then growing all over the deck, sorry, it's a bit of a mess right now, I have grapevines. So these are Concord grapes. They do have seeds, and this is going to be the first year that I'm getting a really decent harvest off of these. And then if we head down these steps away from the deck, away from the house, I'm taking you into the full property where we have most of my garden beds. So once we come off of the deck up here, we're downstairs. This is the entrance to the basement. I have my first raised beds over here. These are actually older. I repurposed these from a discount department store that went out of business, and they had these store fixtures available. So I took them, and they're really shallow, so they're not ideal for growing in. But you can see it hasn't stopped the plants from thriving. I've totally overpacked these beds, but they're primarily brassicas. So we've got Brussels sprouts, but we also have a lot of lettuce, a lot of nasturtiums, tons of other flowers in here, and my absolute favorite is always going to be the basil. And this spot is my favorite just because it's right off the kitchen, so I put a lot of my herbs here. I've got rosemary, I've got thyme, I've got oregano, and this is an area that I love to utilize when I need to grab something really quick from the garden. This is my potatoes. I have these in grow bags, and I'll link these for you guys. These are awesome grow bags for growing potatoes, especially if you have chronic pain like I do and it's difficult for you to grow potatoes and harvest them. These will allow me to dig them up really quickly and just dump them into a wheelbarrow. And then the beds kind of mirror each other except for these enormous Brussels sprouts, which I honestly don't know what I'm even going to do with. They've completely taken over the bed. I'm really surprised, to be honest, because these beds are so shallow. I did not think they would do well here. I just had nowhere else to put them. To be honest, I planted squash kind of everywhere, and I don't know which type is which at this point, but I'm pretty sure this is a patty pan. So there's tons of brassica type things in here. We've got cauliflower, we've got kale, we've got Brussels sprouts, but I also have my herbs in here. And then kind of just spinning around, this is my workspace. So this is where I have my hose link set up. So this is my kinkless hose. I love it. I also have a regular hose, and that's the timer that's going to go up to the green stock that I showed you earlier. So this is just basically where all our water is coming out of. I would love someday to convert this into an outdoor shower as well, to have that kind of walled off on this corner. These beds are probably on their last legs, so this will probably be their second to last year or last year, depending on how they hold up. I'll show you why. So you can see right here, these beds were not made to be used outdoors at all. I don't even know what type of wood it is, but they're totally warped and they might collapse on me at any minute, but it wouldn't be gardening if things weren't a little chaotic sometimes, right? Just past this workspace here with all my water and irrigation, I've got some more water. So this is where I actually collect rainwater off of the house, and I would love to expand this setup. This is a 55-gallon barrel, and then off of this, it's really overgrown right now, but I have a peony plant, a cold frame, and wildflowers. So just to give you a different angle on this, there's all my water set up, my raised beds, this nice sitting area where I love to eat dinner. And then we come up to the big raised beds that I added this year. It was honestly such a dream come true to be able to have these raised beds, and this is all thanks to Gardener's Supply Co. They supplied me with these cedar elevated raised beds to accommodate my chronic pain. Living with arthritis, working in ground, this area was where I used to plant in ground before, and it honestly just became way too challenging for me physically. So when Gardeners offered to send over these amazing beds, how could I say no? Now we're in a northern climate, so things are still kind of just starting to take off here, which is why you won't see anything growing on the arches just yet. However, there's going to be birdhouse gourds, cucamelons, and cucumbers growing on all of these within the next month or so. These are their cedar raised beds, and they also have self-watering irrigation trays underneath. So let me show you how that works. So underneath all of these beds, there are plastic trays that lead to this tube. and this tube opens up. It has a float to tell you when there's water in it, which there's plenty of water in it right now because we actually just got rain. And the other great thing about these is that they act as rainwater catchment systems, because every time it rains, excess water is going to collect in these trays. And these trays, they're 5 gallons each, and there's 4 of them in each of these 2x8 beds. So that means that I really only have to fill them about once a week. Once the plants got established, I was able to stop surface watering, and it's just made things so much easier. The thing that I wanted to show you that makes these beds super special is this toolbox right here. So this toolbox, I keep everything in it. I have got all sorts of goodies from Bare Bones and Felco, and this just eliminated a huge stress point for me because I'm always forgetting a tool either inside or outside, and it gets ruined if I leave it outside, and if I leave it inside, then it's another trip back in to get it. I'm gonna try to show you a really quick layout of everything that's growing in the raised beds right now, but there's so much. I think it's super important for plant health and just overall biodiversity to add flowers in here. So I've got tons of different flowers. I've got marigolds, nasturtium, different violets and pansies, and these ones are actually a relative of purslane. So starting in this front row, I've got lots of Swiss chard. I've got forget-me-nots, one of my favorite flowers. And I've got some graffiti cauliflower. Then I'm tucking in lots of kale, which it looks like the cabbage moths have finally discovered. And I've got my broccoli, which again, being in July, we've already harvested the main heads, but we're still getting lots of little side shoots. This bed was the first bed that I planted because it had the brassicas, so it was all of the cold season crops, so it's a little bit empty right now. We do have some new stuff coming in, but it's just taking its time, which is fine, and I did just have to fertilize it too because the brassicas are such heavy feeders, so we wanted to make sure that we were giving it a chance to recover, giving the soil a chance to recover. So I do have some Brussels sprouts in here, but the funny thing about this is they were planted at the same time as those first Brussels sprouts I showed you over there, and they're like less than half the size, and I really don't know why. I also have solar string lights on these, so that's what this is for. Some people have asked me if the copper is for slugs or electroculture. It is not. It's literally just for the string lights to make it nice and cozy and cute. And that second row is pretty much just the same as that first row that I showed you. And then kind of tucked into those peppers, I also have New Zealand spinach. So this is a new one for me. This is going to make it so that I can have a spinach-like flavor all year long. It's not actually spinach, if you've never heard of this. So this is a plant that tastes like spinach. It's a really mild and green flavor, but it's not actually spinach, so it can tolerate the heat, which is great because spinach is one of my favorite vegetables. And then right here I've got a squash, and again I have no idea what kind this is. I'm very organized. I think it's either a summer squash or a zucchini. But I'm going to have this trail down the side, and I'm going to be pretty aggressively pruning this so that it doesn't take up too much room within the bed itself. After that, I've just got a bunch of Provider green beans. These are the best yielding green beans that I've ever grown. I've got a rainbow array of carrots coming up here that are ready to pick. I've got some lettuces in here, and I also have cucumbers that are under this row cover because we've been dealing with some cucumber beetles. So we've got basil growing here right next to tomatoes. After the tomatoes, I did throw in a couple of eggplant in here. These are the spikiest eggplant that I have ever grown. I can hardly touch them without being pricked. I threw in a Thai basil just to fill in some gaps. This is a patty pan squash, my birdhouse gourds, and some marigolds. You can see the birdhouse gourd climbing here, and that is such a fast grower now that it's established. And then this veritable forest behind the beds is actually our asparagus bed that has gone to seed. I love growing in raised beds, but I do prefer to grow in ground for things like perennials that are pretty low maintenance, so I don't have to do a lot of bending and kneeling to harvest, maintain, or plant them. So there's my house behind me. I've got this area, I'm cardboarding it. It has really bad mugwort issue that I'm working on dealing with. There's my raised beds, there's the asparagus, and then we've got the rhubarb and the garlic. Now, I mentioned before that I'm on this property with my parents. So my parents have a house next to mine, and then we built this house right here. Back in 2020, we finished that up. So this is kind of an interesting living situation. Obviously, we're sharing this space with multiple people. So I just thought I'd show you really quick a couple of the other things that are growing here that aren't part of my garden. So my sister has her own tomato bed going here, as well as another herb patch. And this patch is so diverse. It's got comfrey, it's got borage. The last thing I'm going to show you over here is my lavender bed. So I've been growing lavender with my mom for a number of years now, and this is actually the second patch that I've started. This is basically half of the property. This is the half that I'm primarily growing on just because my house is right there. But there's so much more. My mom has a food forest. My sister is building a greenhouse. So let me know if you want to see more of the rest of the property. Thanks for hanging out with me in the garden today. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them, and make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any other garden tours in the future.